Hello and welcome back to another episode of Hear the Cannons. I am your host, Colin Hallboom, representing BucsGameday, as we all are. I am joined tonight by our editor, River Wells, one of our talented writers, Caleb Skinner, and we got a lot of stuff we want to talk about. A lot has happened since just a week ago. We've got a preseason win versus Cincinnati Bengals that we're going to talk about, and then we've got some joint practices. First opportunity to practice with another team that went down today in Jacksonville. Our guy River was there, so we're going to be picking his brain about that and a whole bunch of other things in between. So before we get into it, though, folks, I just want to implore you to please make sure you are, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on, share it, like it, all that good stuff. We do greatly appreciate it. It helps us grow and continue to deliver you the information that you seek. And while you're at it, make sure you are checking out BucsGameday.com for all your Buccaneers needs. Bunch of content went out today, bunch of content went out yesterday, and a bunch of content will go out tomorrow because that's just what we do. So if you're a Bucs fan, if you're an NFL fan, make sure you're checking us out every day. All right. So we're gonna start with today. We're gonna reverse chronological order here because River, who was down in Jacksonville or up in Jacksonville, up in Jacksonville.
Guys, you got to forgive him. He lives in Canada, so it's technically down for him.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you. Yes. But yeah, man. So like we're, for the rest of us, we're following along on Twitter. You're posting a ton of great videos and information along the way. Why don't you just start? Like, you wrote a great piece summarizing it. So I'm going to let you speak to that a little bit about some of the things that jumped out to you today in Duval County. River's muted. So, yeah, you'd think he was the slow Canadian. Couldn't remember to unmute himself.
I wish I was there. I wish I was in Jacksonville to be able to cover that. But let's see if River can figure out the mute button here.
Well, here, I'll talk about one thing then that I can do remotely, and that is Payne Durham's injury. So this, I didn't hear about it until the day had concluded in terms of the play on the field. And River will talk about, what he saw. But in terms of that Payne Durham injury, it doesn't sound like that much on the surface, like Payne Durham, like depth tight end. I tweeted about it today, but, the Bucs don't have depth at that position. So if he is seriously injured, and it was a knee injury, I believe, so he's going to be going through some further testing.
River, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, we got you now, buddy. So I just jumped into Payne Durham because I wasn't there, so that's what I want to talk about because I could.
Yeah.
So did you see that injury, or you just kind of heard about it?
No, and then a lot of people that I was with on the beat too didn't see it either. I think Todd Bowles just kind of talked about it a little on the after postgame, basically after the practice, and he said that they were getting tests on it, and I didn't see it happen. They were doing two practices. There's two fields in Jacksonville, and they were doing like an offense defense sort of thing on both sides. So you kind of have to look back and forth sometimes. And then no, I didn't see if it was in red zone work, if it was in like an 11v11 period. So not sure about the severity, and not sure, I didn't see it for myself, so I can't say what it looked like. But hopefully Payne is okay because he's probably going to be a big part of the offense if that's the case.
Yeah, I think so. And like they just don't have the depth behind him, right? If Payne Durham goes down, like who's next up? A 7th round draft pick, Devin Culp out of Washington.
Yeah,
I mean, right? Looks like he's kind of already advanced himself beyond O'Keefe. So big weakness there on the roster, which is something we talked about a few episodes ago and is really no secret to any fans. Now, aside from the injury, since you didn't see that, tell us about what you did see, man. What was the good, the bad, and the ugly today? I hear there was a fair bit of ugly.
There was quite a fair bit of ugly. The defense got shelled by Trevor Lawrence to get a baseball term in there. He was really firing off some footballs. Brian Thomas Jr. in particular, their latest draft pick, from the first round, wide receiver at LSU, was burning Zion McCollum. He burned McCollum twice. He got Kayvon Merriweather pretty badly too on a touchdown. The first time he burned McCollum, Lawrence overthrew him. But CJ Beathard had a nice completion as well. So it's hard to really say what that could mean, especially because some of these could have been sacks, right? Some of these could have been pressures in a real game scenario, but it wasn't amazing. And I think the big thing as well is that Kalijah Kancey wasn't playing either on the line. He's a little bit they're resting him maybe before the start of the season, so that's not amazing. But we'll have to see where that goes from there. Good red zone work looked pretty decent from the Bucs, I thought. On the offensive period, you had Mike Evans getting in for touchdowns. You had Cameron Johnson was back. He's kind of slowly getting back to it, but he was in for touchdowns as well. So, I think that was good, but defense really needs some work.
So what you saw in terms of the defense getting abused by Trevor Lawrence, I mean, there were plenty of what you mentioned. Kalijah Kancey wasn't out there, but I mean, the Bucs are going to have to be able to manage without Kalijah Kancey in there this year. Like, was there in particular, like, was Brian Thomas Jr., like I saw a couple clips of him going off. Was he a big part of that, or?
Oh yeah, big time. He was really torching the defense, and he burned McCollum twice, like I mentioned. Burned Kalen Merriweather too. He was really getting some good reps in the Bucs offense. He's very fast, and McCollum's fast too. So you would think that he would stick with him in that instance, but they were having some trouble with him. And hopefully on day 2 they'll definitely improve and try and approach him from a different angle or get some better reps on him because he was putting in work.
Was there any good to be discussed here, River, that you could go in a little more detail about in terms of for the Buccaneers fans who are looking for some good news on this Wednesday evening?
Yeah, I mentioned the red zone work was pretty decent. You had Cameron Johnson get a touchdown in there. You had Mike Evans get a touchdown in there as well. So definitely some stuff going on there. Bucky Irving got a touchdown up the middle in red zone work too. So they were doing pretty well in red zone work with Kyle Trask at quarterback, Baker Mayfield in there going back and forth. That was probably the best part of the day and the most momentum I saw from the Bucs. For sure, it was during those periods. But other than that, no big splash plays on offense in 11v11s, but definitely some Chris Godwin catches, some Mike Evans catches, some stuff like that. Yeah.
Caleb, are you reading into that at all? Does it scare you? Be honest. Or is that just like silly and it doesn't mean a thing and tomorrow could be totally different? What are your thoughts there?
I mean, it's preseason at the end of the day. Joint practices are joint practices. Apparently it was one of the cleaner joint practices. So, not a whole lot of trash talk, or doesn't seem like they were competing at too high of a level for things today. So I'm not going to read too deep into a whole lot of what is happening overall.
Fair enough. And I mean, I think it would be silly to read into that. I mean, I think just as easily the Bucs could come out tomorrow and the reports be that they're running all over the Jags. So most important is that those guys are getting a little bit of live game action or like simulated action against an opponent, right? They've only a lot, especially the ones, right? Those guys aren't out there versus Cincinnati. They likely won't be against Jacksonville this weekend. Is that right, River? Would you agree that those guys are probably going to rest? Didn't Bulls say something like that?
Yeah, Bulls said that the third preseason game is likely to be where most of the starters play for a certain period of time. I don't know how long that's going to be, but definitely where most of those starters will play. So this will be the really intense period in joint practice where they're going at each other, hitting. It's the ones, and then they'll probably take it easy for this preseason game against the Jaguars, and then probably next week they'll have one joint practice with the Dolphins. But at that point, I think starters will play.
It's more about the process than the results at this point of the offseason. I think that's well known. And I think that applies to, if we go back a little bit, to the preseason win at Cincinnati. I don't think anyone cares at all about the final score, but what mattered was seeing certain guys play well. And I think, at least myself, I came away really pleased, particularly with Graham Barton and that Buccaneers run game. That was huge to see. But I want to focus on Graham Barton first. Graham Barton looked fantastic when he was in there, played a decent number of snaps, few drives. And I mean, there's already clips going around Twitter of him just pancaking dudes. And when you go and rewatch it, it really was impressive. He graded out better than any first round offensive draft pick. Again, preseason, whatever, but like it matches the eye test ultimately. Caleb, were you as impressed with Graham Barton as I was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he didn't play a ton of snaps in that first game, but he played enough for us to see why the Bucs decided to draft him, why Jason Licht and company decided to draft him. And he's a dog, like no matter how he comes across as in person. We've talked to him and, seen his demeanor and the type of character that he carries himself with, which is a lot different than what you saw on the field this past weekend. So like he was pushing guys around, doing really good in the run block game, which is something that the Bucs have obviously paid attention to since the end of last season. Well, even from probably the onset of last season, but still, at the same time, the run game, being able to block for the run game, has been a point of emphasis for this team. And, they've seemed to have corrected that by bringing in Barton and then obviously Ben Bredesen there at the guard spot. So with Solopeta out. But yeah, overall, it looked really good. Barton, he was cleaning guys on that Bucky Irving touchdown, just completely, got his first block, shed off of that, and got into a deeper level and was able to take on another guy into the end zone, which that tells you the type of drive that he has in the game of football and how much he loves it. You don't stop just after the first guy that you hit, and you keep moving forward and keep pushing and get your guy even more room to be able to run. So couldn't ask, for more. I think he was the highest graded offensive lineman out of all rookies from this draft class over the first week of the preseason. So great start for him. Excited to see what he can, continue to build on off of this first game.
Another guy who I was impressed watching was Cody Mock. I thought, talking about that Bucky Irving touchdown, I thought he also laid an excellent block there and finished right through the whistle, as he's known to do. I know, River, you're hoping, and I am too, for a big not bounce back season, sorry, but like an appropriate step forward this season from Cody Mock. And I think that was a good start from him. Would you agree?
Absolutely, I do agree. Mock had a decently rough season last year, but we talk about it ad nauseum. Getting used to guard or any offensive line position in the NFL is very, very difficult. So to see that and to see what he did on that Bucky Irving play, right, really pushing guys and moving them out of the way, if he can keep doing that and improving on his craft, and he plays really good football in the regular season, that's a huge upgrade in Tampa Bay automatically. And it's really good for the future, obviously, but it's an immediate sort of boost to that interior offensive line. And, I have faith that Mock can do it because he did show some instances last year where you're like, oh, this is the potential that he has, right? I thought certain games you really saw where he was getting used to the pace of play and he was moving people. So I think that if he can take that step up, like we kind of saw some hints of in that Cincinnati game, that's going to be big. And he certainly was moving guys on that play.
No doubt. And I mean, it paid dividends on the ground, right? We saw Bucky Irving looked awesome, elusive as advertised.
Sean Tucker also went crazy.
Dude, yeah. So that's what I was going to get to is Sean Tucker, because he looked fantastic, and that's really nice to see. I had some expectations for him last year, which is unfair. He's an undrafted free agent, and he's coming off of a serious heart concern. Like that's why he went undrafted. Otherwise, he was potentially like a third, fourth rounder. He's that kind of talent playing at Syracuse.
He could have even been even higher when he was playing at Syracuse. Like he was unstoppable.
Yeah, he was excellent. So anyway, we didn't get the glimpse of that last year, and I thought the reason why I was expecting we might was just because there wasn't a lot of depth at that position, right? You got Keyshawn Vaughn, who's out of the building now. I think he's in San Fran, if memory serves correctly.
Just got to San Fran, yeah.
Just got there, and then Chase Edmonds was banged up. So you thought he had an opportunity. He wasn't able to do much, not even in the preseason. But here we go, a year later, full off season, fully healthy, and his first game running behind this new look offensive line under a new offensive coordinator. And he tore it up, man. So, that is huge. Okay, so if all of a sudden the Bucs go from having what feels like Rachaad White and Chase Edmonds, okay, for a little change of pace here and there, that's great. But if you throw in a Bucky Irving and the Sean Tucker, who we know has the ability, like if this was just some random dude who ran for 70 whatever yards in a preseason game, we wouldn't be talking about it. But Sean Tucker has a serious body of work at the collegiate level, and he has all the tools. So all of a sudden, running back depth could be a strength. And obviously it's too soon to say this, but I'm just saying, if that happens, best case scenario, if what we see is no mirage, then we could definitely be looking at a much improved running back room. Caleb, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, would you rather see Bucky Irving or Sean Tucker kind of take that RB2 line, or do you think it's going to be Chase Edmonds?
I mean, it's kind of complicated at this point, right? Because you throw in the fact of these new kickoff rules. So the whole running back situation kind of gets thrown into a cluster, you know what. So, like, at the end of the day, how many running backs do you want to keep on the field now that this new kickoff thing is implemented? Obviously, Rashad White is your bell cow. Now you have Bucky Irving and Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds, obviously, we know his injury history to this point. He's had injuries over the course of his career, but he did provide sparks later in the season last year, and he looked good. And in the sparing minutes that he was able to get to spell Rashad, we got to see where he's at. He's injured this offseason. Once again, we're not really getting to see a whole lot from him. So this is a chance for Bucky to kind of prove himself, and he is. He looked really good in his opening showcase there for the Buccaneers. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. It's not really a battle per se, but I like them both. I think they can both, depending on matchups, of course, as well. I mean, Bucky can kind of run a little bit more in between tackles than Chase. Chase is kind of, your outside run guy. Really, really quick with the ball. You think of like a Mostert type of runner when you think of Chase Edmonds. So he kind of spells them differently. So, but Bucky looked good. I expect Bucky to continue to look good. He's an explosive runner. He's a big play, capable playmaking type player. And you want to hit those plays. That's big, So at the end of the day, I think spelling Rashad with another Rashad Jr., if you will, looks pretty good for the Buccaneers so far. We'll continue to see how it progresses. But as far as the running back situation goes, you might want to keep 4. We'll see because of this whole new kickoff thing. It looks like running backs might be the guys to go to there.
River, I want to ask you, what was the bigger pot, or what did you take away from the Bucs' success on the ground game? Was it this injection of talent into the running back room, or was more optimism coming from the fact that this offensive line just looks a little bit different?
It could be a combination of things. Really, we mentioned the interior O-line, the starters were playing. So you had Bredesen in there, you had Barton in there, you had Mock in there. And I don't know how the alignment, the Bengals interior line was going. So that could be a factor. I will say this, though. I do like Liam Cohen's play calling quite a bit. It was very vanilla because it was preseason, right? So he's not revealing his hand yet. But you're seeing a lot of really nice uses of motion, pre-snap motion in particular. And I saw numerous plays where Cohen would have receivers go in motion and then contribute to blocks on the run from that momentum, right? Dave Canales didn't do a lot of that stuff. A little bit more stagnant, a little bit less motion there. And the run schemes were all very similar. I think that's going to be a big contributor.
Right now. Rivers is loving what he's seeing.
Hey, listen, I love pre-snap motion. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a big pre-snap motion guy, all about that sort of thing. I think that could be a contributor too. I think it's reasonable to understand that the Bucs running game can't get a lot worse. But I do think there is genuine hope for improvement from that preseason game. It's preseason, you can't look into a lot. So it could be this or that. It could be, starters were here, but not here. This is yada yada. But the fact that you were getting some of those those rushing yards after contact, and that Bucky Irving was able to fit through those holes there, especially with how good the interior run game was, along with that more modern play calling, I think it's reasonable to expect some big improvements in the run game. Maybe not, they're not going to turn into like one of the best rushing teams in the NFL, maybe, but I think there's a lot of hope there. I think Bucky looked good. Sean Tucker looked good.
What would you say that point needs to be, though? Like, at this point, like, it just needs to be average, right? Like, it just needs to be okay. Like,
sure. And you would want to be better than average, but average would go a long way for this offense. And I think it could be better than that, especially if guys like Mock pan out. If guys like Bredesen play good football, if guys like Barton does what he did in the preseason, which was play fantastic, right? If he keeps doing that, I think there's a lot to look forward to. So I don't think it's just a one-off thing. I think we could see a pretty improved run game.
It's all on Bredesen, if you ask me, man. I got faith in those other guys. Based on the pedigree, Bredesen's the one who we're going to need to kind of hold the fort. And if he can do that, then I think we're going to see a markedly improved group, and I think it'll pay dividends on the ground, matching up with Liam Cohen's offensive philosophy and scheme and how those things tie together. One of our most loyal viewers at BucsGameday on YouTube, Bud Cannibalist, shout out to Bud. He says, heard Bowles said we needed more energy to start. This was also a factor last season. Did it have anything to do with the heat or fatigue of some sort? Assuming he's talking about that opening drive touchdown for the Bengals and how the Bucs started slow. And, you know, Bud, you are not wrong. That is absolutely something that we saw a lot of last year. Bucs went almost a whole year without scoring a touchdown on their opening drive, if I'm not mistaken. And it was really tough to watch. In terms of determining why that is, I don't think it's like an objective, tangible thing that you can identify. I think it's something that just happens. Like, I don't think it's a matter of them being prepared. Certainly don't think it's a matter of the heat, because if any team was to be conditioned to come out and play in the heat, it would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers playing in Tampa. I'm just looking at you guys having some issues hearing me here?
A little bit.
Or is my computer frozen?
Shaky there. I will say, while you're working on that, Bowles did mention today at the joint practice, actually, that he thought they started flat, and that they had improved going forward into the practice session. And okay. I do think heat and fatigue is a little bit of that as well. So I think that's something to note. It's hot out there, guys. I've been in Tampa Bay and I've been in Jacksonville, and it's hot. Caleb's been in Tampa Bay too for training camp, but it's no joke. So I think they are used to it. And as far as game time goes, it's hard to tell, like you said, Colin, what that is. But the momentum is a fickle thing, and you would hope with a more reinvigorated and youthful and more modern offensive scheme, that might go away. And I doubt that they'll have that same experience with not scoring on the opening drive this year like they did last year. It's not only statistically improbable, but I think they definitely improved on those sort of areas. Should have a more explosive run game, better O-line, better, shaped up receiving core. I don't think it's going to happen.
One it's just one phrase from me: new offensive coordinator.
My man. Absolutely. Liam Cohen. I've talked about Liam Cohen a lot because I do like what Liam Cohen's doing. I think he adds a more of a modern sort of McVay style offense. He came from the Rams, but the Bucs didn't run that really with Canales last year. And Canales had some good play concepts, and for a first-year offensive coordinator, I thought he did some things well. But there were a lot of aspects of the game, modern aspects of the game, that he didn't really ascribe to.
It was slow, right? Like, I mean, it worked. It worked. It was slow, and it wasn't anything that was going to be hard to, from a defensive perspective, visualize. Like if you're looking at it, you're going to be able to be like, yeah, I know what they're doing. Luckily the Bucs are good enough to be able to, counteract that, but it wasn't very intricate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that could change with Cohen. And you can't say too much because we haven't seen a regular season game with Liam Cohen at the helm yet. I want to put that out there. We'll have to see how he does in the regular season when his playbook opens. Me too. Cohen has me excited too, bud. And I think it comes down to the more modern concepts that we're finally seeing in a Buccaneers offense we haven't seen in a while. Definitely not with Leftwich and Arians, right? And then we were getting there a little bit with Canales.
But at that time,
you mentioned tempo.
At that time, it was okay because it was Brady, and that was the offense that fit.
Exactly.
It made sense. So different now, though.
And then in 2022, it suddenly wasn't okay, and time for a change there. This is the first time we're really seeing sort of a modern Big Four offense. Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur.
Big question here too, River. Like it's been what, like 3 different offensive coordinators now, right?
Yeah.
So, in 3 years,
yeah.
Is this also like an area where this guy could possibly stick for a few years and give this offense a little bit of like a little bit more continuity than we're used to?
Unfortunately, I think the answer is no. And the reason is well, if Liam Cohen is good but not great and still improving, he might stick around and hone his craft. But like we saw, even with Dave Canales, who wasn't amazing, the burden of having a defensive head coach is that your offensive coordinator can get poached quite often if they're really, really good, right? So I think that's a possibility. But again, we're getting way ahead of ourselves here with Liam Cohen. But it's something to think about. That lack of continuity could come down to Todd Bowles being a defensive guy and those offensive coordinators kind of come in and out. So we'll see how Liam Cohen does this year. I would love to see him, A, do well, and B, stick around. But we'll see how that goes. Before we wrap up here, Caleb, I really wanted to talk to you about something. In joint practice, we saw a rough defensive outing, like we mentioned. Brian Thomas Jr. kind of cooking the offense, yada yada. Defensive line looked pretty decent, especially against the Jaguars' offensive line, but the secondary had a rough showing. What do you think about how this kind of goes with Zion McCollum and Jabal Dean and these starters kind of having this happen to them? Are you particularly worried about this, or do you think that what do you think they need to do tomorrow to get ready to turn it around, basically?
I mean, we didn't see them in action. So I mean, like, it's tough to say at this point because they're still just at practice level. We expect them to probably Todd Bowles keeps everything close to his chest, whether it's injury, whether it's depth chart, whether it's this, that, or the other. We're the last ones to hear it always, and great chess play by Bowles, but as he always does. But I mean, all that being said, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. It's preseason. We'll see, as we start getting further and further into preseason where they get a little bit more snaps, possibly, we'll be able to tell. But I mean, these joint practices are joint practices. We've got reports coming out of both camps, Jacksonville camp and Bucks camp, that this was a very uneventful kind of joint practice. No fights, no scrappiness, nobody really going super.
Right, and Todd Bowles talked about that and was pretty happy about that, actually, for the first time.
Right.
Antoine Winfield Jr. even said, hey, it's just the cleanest joint practice we've had. So that's nice. That's nice.
Bowles loves that. Bowles doesn't like to have that stuff going on, but you also want to see a little bit of fire from your team, right? You want to see, competing. And like when you're competing, a lot of those emotions come out, and that's where you get those scraps, those fights, this, that, and the other. Not seeing that. You can say it's a concern. You can say it's discipline. You can call it really whatever you want. But what ultimately Bucs fans want to see is progress, right? Like, do we want to see these guys making progress? And the Jacksonville Jaguars didn't even make the playoffs last year. And one can make the case that they potentially got worse in certain areas than they were at last year. So having the starters on there, yeah, there's a couple of hiccups going on with injuries. But from what we've seen in camp, things have looked good, things have looked sharp, and it's not necessarily translating in this first joint practice. Emphasis on
the second one could be more fruitful, for sure.
Could be a totally different atmosphere. All of a sudden, defense comes out, offense comes out, Jacksonville can't do anything. So it's a joint practice. It's the first one of the season. It's going to be what it's going to be. Ultimately, you don't want to pour too much of the Kool-Aid packet into the water. Is all I'm saying. You don't want to rest your laurels on this first joint practice against another team.
That's fair, and it could end up being better tomorrow, especially given that Jags win round one, whatever you want to call it, maybe round two. We see some more explosive plays from the offense. We see Jalen McMillan and Trey Palmer kind of get it together a little bit. They had some drops today. Hopefully they can get that better, and then we could see a really good Bucs team. So then next week we have the Miami Dolphins joint practice too, and if they show out against that really good team, that would be encouraging for the future as well.
I mean, I think
we're gonna wrap it up here.
I think I'd rather them do that though.
Yeah, probably. The Dolphins are a very good team, so that would be nice to see them play that well. And you never know. Tomorrow could be a whole different story. So that's what Bucs fans will be hoping for. Is what the Bucs themselves will be hoping for, and hopefully they can carry some of that momentum from the end of practice, kind of like Todd Bowles and Antoine Winfield Jr. were saying, kind of, oh, we got a little bit better. The intensity picked up. They can carry that momentum into tomorrow. That would be some good things to see.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap it up here. Thanks everybody, of course, for checking out BucsGameday website. We have tons of articles coming at you constantly. All the Bucs coverage you need, live updates, injury news, analysis pieces, etc. And of course, we have this YouTube channel here. So make sure you hit like and subscribe again if you want to see more content like this. And we'll keep reporting from joint practice in the upcoming preseason game. So I am editor and writer River Wells. This is Caleb Skinner, writer here at BucsGameday. And thanks for tuning in, guys. Really appreciate it. We'll catch you next week.